What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be looking at the future decade at Thorpe Park Resort, kind of going over what I think could be coming to Thorpe Park over the next 10 years. That includes rides, refurbishments, restaurants, hotels, the entire lot really. So yeah, if you do go on to enjoy the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Obviously you don't have to if you don't want to. I don't take it personally, it's fine, but if you do want to, then feel free. I absolutely appreciate everyone who supported me so far, but yeah, without further ado, we've got a lot to get to in today's video, so let's get into it. Okay then, so kind of looking at the next couple of years at Thorpe Park, there's a few different things that are indicating what could be going on. Obviously at the moment, the kind of talk of the town other than Hyperia is the fact that the Slammer queue line, or what used to be the old Slammer queue line, is now being deconstructed. So that's been ripped out and taken out, and I do believe Thorpe Park themselves has also come out and said that they're going to be taking Slammer out also. So they're kind of prepping that area for something. What that something is, I have no idea. The kind of running theory at the moment is that they'll replace it with a different flat ride, which I think is pretty plausible. It's still kind of a big space. It feels quite enclosed because where the trees are and where the toilets are, but once that queue line's out, I think there's going to be plenty of space to have a flat ride in there. In terms of what they could put in, I don't really know. My mind kind of immediately goes to a drop tower, but obviously that doesn't really work because we've obviously got Detonator at the park, so I don't know. If it was up to me, I'd really love a space shot tower, just like Dr. Doom's Fearfall over in Orlando, Florida. I think that would really fit in with the Hyperia area, obviously with it kind of taking into consideration the heights and the thrill of kind of being launched straight up into the air and then dropping right back down again. Obviously the fact that we've got Detonator, like I said, kind of means that something like this probably isn't likely, but it is still fun to think about nonetheless, and I think it would be a really good addition if they did bring it to the park. On top of this as well, to kind of feed the flames, I do believe that there's been some things found in terms of trademarking names. I think the company that trademarked the name Hyperia has also trademarked a couple of new names, one of them including Skybound. And Skybound kind of gives us a little bit of an indication, at the very least, if it is something to do with Thorpe Park, where they could be going. Obviously, it kind of sounds like something tall again, so again a drop tower potentially, but I think the more likely option will be something more along the lines of Gerstlauer Skyfly. I think that would fit in really well at the park. I did hear Digital Dan actually mention this in his video he made on the subject, so definitely go check that out if you're interested. But yeah, it's kind of something that only time will tell. At the moment, a lot of people are focused on Hyperia opening, so realistically I don't think we're going to kind of start to see things kind of bubble to the surface until at least next year we kind of find out what's actually going on. Obviously, in terms of when this could be coming to the park and being built, I'm not entirely sure. My mind kind of goes to the fact that it could be built over close season this year, but I'm not really holding my breath for that. You know, you never know with Thorpe Park what their kind of time frames are when they want things done. Obviously their main focus for this year will be Hyperia. They're starting the deconstruction of the queue line and the deconstruction of Slammer, but they could easily not do anything with that space until late next year, so it's not really kind of set in stone that it is going to be happening in the very, very near future, but I would say it's a pretty safe bet to kind of assume that something will happen with that space within the next 2 years, so 2025 or 2026. But yeah, it's really exciting to think about nonetheless. Let me know down in the comments below kind of what different rides you would like to see in this space. I'm going to kind of survey the area a little bit more when I go on Saturday to ride Hyperia. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, so definitely let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Okay, so moving a little bit further ahead in around the 2027-2028 kind of range, I do have a little bit of an outlandish theory now. We're kind of starting to get out of the likely options and more the kind of wishful thinking stuff, but I think there will be some form of accommodation added to the park, or at least started being considered around this sort of time. You've got to kind of remember at the moment, Thorpe Park, out of all the different Merlin parks, that being Chessington, Legoland, Alton Towers, are kind of the weakest out of them in when it comes to kind of like accommodation and hotels, and I think Thorpe Park kind of know it. They obviously have the Shark Hotel at the moment, which is you know, it's suitable for what it is, but it's obviously not a permanent solution to accommodation. I wouldn't exactly say it's on par with a lot of the stuff from the other parks. Now, this was something that Thorpe Park actually considered quite heavily not that long ago, actually, in 2016. There were extensive plans for a waterside hotel that would kind of be connected via like a boat link, and it was kind of going to go ahead. It was going to kind of go through its planning phases in like 2016, 2017, and then kind of eventually release in 2018, which obviously we now know didn't happen. but they obviously kind of thought about it, and there were loads of plans. I'll try and put a couple on screen at the moment, but there were loads and loads of plans that Thorpe Park had kind of released and detailed, and with these kind of plans that we now have kind of access to in quite great detail, we also kind of know the time frame Thorpe Park were looking at to kind of build something like this, and that was kind of roughly from 2016 to 2018, so it's not a massive window. It's kind of the similar kind of time frame that Hyperia went on when it was under construction, but I do think that this is something they're going to be considering quite heavily, especially with Hyperia opening now. It's going to bring a lot more attention to the park, so it would make sense if they kind of put in a permanent solution to accommodation. Of course, this is something that most of the other Merlin parks have done by now. Alton Towers has a wide range of accommodation, so does Legoland, and even Chessington is building a new hotel now, I believe. So realistically, Thorpe Park's kind of the odd one out here, not really having anything substantial in terms of accommodation. Whether or not that's a strategic move by Thorpe Park to kind of focus on a few other things, but I do think it will end up catching up to them. I think a lot of people are kind of catching on that the Shark Hotel's not really, you know, up to the standard that the other hotels across the Merlin parks are. So it'd be nice to see another hotel kind of be added to the roster around that kind of, you know, southeast area in terms of theme parks, especially kind of considering the plans are kind of already there. Okay, so moving into 2029 to 2030 roughly, I think there's a few different things that could be happening around this sort of time. The main one kind of being, I think we're going to see a fair few removals. I do think that the Ghost Train will probably have had its day by this point. Whether they decide to completely retheme it or just strip the building as a whole, there's a lot of things they could do with it if they did want to get rid of the Ghost Train. But I do think it's one of those things that realistically is running out of a bit of steam now. But on top of that, like I discussed in a video a few weeks ago, I do think The Walking Dead The Ride could be rethemed to something new by this point. Obviously, we know that the IP will probably run out at some point, and I think around about this sort of time is a fairly good guess maybe, so they might just completely retheme it. But if you do want to check out that video, it is available on my channel. I went kind of into quite a bit of detail on what I think could be going on with the Walking Dead ride, but yeah, as it stands, I think at this point I think the park's going to be kind of going through a bit of a quieter stage around 2029 and 2030, and I think it will start to slowly build up once we get into the next decade. I think at this point we will probably see an event refresh have happened by now. I think they may well kind of switch these about here and there just as they please, but I think 2030 and 2029 are going to be when things like Carnival and Mardi Gras have kind of had their heyday, so they may well swap them out for something different. Obviously, I think Fright Nights and kind of Oktoberfest are the two events that I think will kind of stay here for maybe a little bit longer than that. Obviously, Fright Nights is a staple of Thorpe Park, they'll probably never get rid of it, but things like Mardi Gras and Carnival have kind of been swapped about in the past anyway, so by this point maybe we could be seeing some different summer events and even some spring events as well. Okay, so this kind of brings us to quite close to the end of the decade in about 2030, 2031. Obviously at this point I think Thorpe Park are going to probably be ramping up their kind of ideas and the excitement for a next big project. Obviously, if they did go down the route of doing a hotel, I think the time frame from when they start a new project is kind of up in the air a little bit. Obviously, with Hyperia and the Swarm being over a decade apart, it's kind of hard to tell what they're kind of planning to do. But I would imagine they're not going to wait as long this time. I think we will probably see around 2031, 2032, some planning permission maybe, or just the announcement that something is coming. I do think that the island next to Swarm is a perfect candidate for something. Whether it's a dark ride or a roller coaster is kind of something to kind of go over in another video, but I do think that's a nice little patch of land for them to work on, especially considering there's a service road right next to it. So I think at this kind of point we'll probably see some indicators on whether or not, you know, anything is going to start happening on these kind of hot spots, I would call them, where we could potentially see new attractions, whether that be clearance, groundwork, whatever. Obviously there'll be kind of slight tweaks and changes before they release plans and try and get obviously the council on their side, but I think this is the kind of perfect point. I think by the end of the decade, at least by 2024, we will probably hear about what the next big attraction is, whether it be, like I said, a dark ride or a roller coaster. I'd like it to be another dark ride. I think they haven't really had much luck with dark rides in the past, obviously with the Ghost Train, but I do really hope that they kind of don't give up on the dark ride idea and still try and pursue it, because they've got a really good roller coaster lineup. So a dark ride side would kind of help balance things out a little bit. But yeah, only time will tell on that one. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of the decade now. I didn't want to go too much in detail with a lot of this stuff because obviously it is only a theory. There are obviously kind of facts that have been embedded in them, but at the end of the day, none of this stuff is probably going to happen. But I do think we will obviously see something substantial happen over the next 10 years at Thorpe Park. I would be very surprised if we don't. I think it is very much a guarantee at this point. I think now that COVID is over, I think we're going to see a very, very busy Thorpe Park and a very busy theme park industry in general. Obviously around this sort of time we're potentially even going to be getting the Universal Great Britain, which could be really, really cool. That would be a great addition to the UK as a whole. So I think a lot of these parks now are kind of getting out of the groove of COVID and are kind of getting back to their normal way of working things. It really did throw a spanner in a wrench in many different ways, and it was just a horrible experience all around. But it's nice to see that a lot of these companies are kind of recuperating a little bit now, because there was a worry back when COVID was going on that a lot of this stuff would kind of disappear because there just isn't any money going into it. But obviously that's kind of changed since then. They've got Hyperion opening this year. That's going to bring a load of attention to the park. So I don't think we have to worry about investments going forwards. I think we're going to see a good few things happen over the next 10 years. Maybe some of which I've discussed in today's video. Like I said, accommodation I think is something that's definitely around the corner. But yeah, only time will tell. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of the video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do want me to do this with any other theme parks like Alton Towers, Chessington, I would be more than happy to do so. Just let me know down in the comments below. I know Alton Towers has got a lot going on kind of at the moment, as well as kind of Chessington and Legoland have all had things that have happened recently. So there's going to be a lot of, like I said, busy stuff going on over the next 10 years. So I could definitely make those videos if you guys would like them. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. See ya.